I'm ready.
All right, are you ready? You know, do you remember the term of Little Abner, ready for All right. Okay, we're now taking up another program with our friend Steve up in Vermont, and we've been talking on the genetic or the background of my family, and we have a connection. He and I are fourth cousins. Is that what it is? Second cousin. Is that what it is? And
Yep.
he's been tracing these things, and I find it very interesting. He's regaled me with stories about my grandfather and people I only remembered in the midst of history and everything. It's been really, really, really interesting and everything. And we got talking about some of the major implications of all the human condition of the state of technological development, including this Skype program we're doing, and then also including the works that have the advancements, exponentially increasing advancements, not just arithmetic, but exponential advancement of information technology, including all the information technology that makes this Skype program and television and all these things commonplace almost to the world now, with a smartphone in the hands of people all over the world that can be communicating. But also we were going to talk some about the implications of that research focus, including a lot of the money that is attracted to it by the available investment capital and so forth to the scions of the world for the excuse me again, I got a little bit of a cough, for the transmogrification of that information technology that is now being taken up by the introduction of robotics. And they're coding that into that. And most of our geopolitical major thinkers, it seems to me, are very concerned about the implications of that, because that will be undercutting the means by which the present system is held in place, the implications of how the present system politically or economically is held in place if you have robotics displacing massively labor input to production, and it would undercut the labor theory of value that is used in order to structure the human society. But we were going to play it, but we can't play it. And it was with the thing we'd recommend here. What's his name again, Dozian? The guy.
Siras.
Yes, say it again, Kevin, Kevin Surace, major guy. And those who are viewing could try, just Google him and he'll come up. He's got a 15-minute piece that really lays it out in a way that is very disquieting to a lot of people. I got this cough. I wonder if they could come up with a cure for the common cold. When are they going to come up with a cure for the common cold and cough? But anyway, this thing about that. But we're not. But so why don't we go back and just take out from where we were? We were talking about the family and so forth and the discoveries that you've made of our background. And I thank you enormously for introducing me to the realities of my familial background that I've never, until my 82 years, had access to until you got in touch with me the other day, for which I thank you enormously, cousin.
Well, I'm happy that you're a little bit more about some of your family members, and you know a little bit more where you came from.
And that we're related. You're my relative.
Related, and now we share different family traits, or not.
Right.
Possibly we do. I certainly see familiarity between the way I remember my grandfather and the way you remember your grandfather. Brothers.
Yeah.
So clearly there is some connection.
I'm sorry. I'm going to get a drink of water. Go ahead. Keep talking. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember when
I got a little tickle in my throat, but go ahead. Yeah.
Radio. She had in what they used to call the cough button. And if you feel like there's a cough coming on, they would just bang it, you know?
And what would happen?
It's off the broadcast.
Stop the broadcast, right?
Yeah.
Well, here we can just keep talking through a cough or two.
Well, there you go. This is real TV.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it's amazing, isn't it, that we're able to get this kind of thing. If it was 100 years ago, we couldn't be talking about this in any kind of meaningful way. It would be
100 years ago. Well, first of all, 100 years ago, we wouldn't be here, but we wouldn't have been able to even connect this way.
Right.
In any way, we wouldn't have found each other. We wouldn't be able to communicate like this. Over, what are we? We're 300 miles away. 300 miles.
Yeah. And they used to have to use smoke signals out on the plains and so forth 100 years ago. And they, it's all limited. And it's all coming. It's all the whole damned evolutionary thing, material reality is all coming exponential.
It is.
What happened out of the blue when this internet thing has had such a huge, profound effect upon the human condition? Yeah.
Well, Howard, just imagine, just remember. The computer has changed everyone's lives, and we didn't grow up with computers. We use them now. Yeah. But our kids have grown up with computers, or our grandchildren will. They're already. My 3-year-old is already looking and is able to flip pictures on a phone. She understands the thing.
Amazing. Maybe we don't appreciate it adequately, or the youth don't appreciate what a magnificent or incredible change that's going on. They just take it for granted.
Absolutely.
I guess we took it for granted when they finally gave us electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know Lulu, the one who is my grandmother.
Lulu, yeah.
Yeah, she was the one who was the doctor, right?
She was, yes.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think, what was it about her that what we were talking about?
That's horrible.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was that I was thinking about Lulu. It's escaped me now.
Don't forget, she graduated from the University of Michigan with a medical degree in what, 18?
She graduated in 1888, I think it was.
Yeah, that long ago now. She must be one of the very first.
Yeah, she was one of the first to break the glass ceiling.
Her education was
for that,
just over 100 years ago.
That's right.
Now it's commonplace.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it was. That she used to have a place down on Trumbull Street in New York, and I could remember visiting with her there.
Oh, really?
That would be my mother's mother. See, and I remember these are people I remember, but they're sort of vague because the connections aren't lived all the time. I guess if you all lived in one little town, then the connections would be constant. But you're spread out in an urban environment, so that's part of the human condition in the modern expression. But anyway,
your mother's mother was Grace Brunk.
Yes, no. My mother was Grace Brunk. That was
her mother.
Her mother was what's her name? Was it Sprunk? Yeah, sure. They were German in background.
They were Germans.
Yeah,
yes.
They were German in background. But in any event, the word what it was when she lived on 16th Street. I used to visit with her there. She lived in what they called a loft. Do they still call? What do they call a flat? They call it a flat. It would be a big apartment. They call it a flat where she lived. And she had chatterboxes there. Do they still? You're too young, probably. But they used to have a book. There was a children's story book. And there used to be chatterboxes. And she would have all those there. And I'd visit with her there. And we would play. I'm like 5 years old or something. And I loved her. She was great. And every time I went there, I don't know how she managed it, but I would walk into that house of hers, and there was always something beautiful baking in the oven that smelled like cookies or something. It was always, and she had a candy dish. And the candy dish was always full of candy. You understand what I mean? I was only 5 years old. And she
Your
was
biggie,
there.
Howard?
No, and then she had a flat. And then I remember playing a game of Old Maid. You're too young. See, you're too young. That's the trouble. You're too young to remember these things like us old timers, you know.
Oh, it's a card game. I know that.
No, but do you remember the game of Old Maid?
Yeah.
That was a game they used to play. And she would go, and you had an Old Maid, and you're not supposed to get. I'm 5 years old. I love 5-year-olds. I absolutely adore 5 years old. They have no artifice at all. They're just honest. They're just absolutely gorgeous. And I guess even I was gorgeous when I was 5, and then I ended up like this. But anyway, she would play the game. You had the game, you fold them out, and then you pull the card, right? And you have these different cards you get, and you get paid and everything. And the trick was not to end up with the Old Maid card. And she would hold it like this, and then she would stick the Old Maid card up high. And the others were on a keep it, and the Old Maid card was sticking up high. And I would pick it. And then she would pick it. You know, I would hold it up, and I thought I was so clever, you know, and everything. I remember that. Grandmothers are wonderful things, yeah. And she always had something baking in the oven. But I remember being with her. Oh, in her garage on 16th Street, Henry Ford, who was a great figure in American history, tinkered in her garage on 16th Street when he was a lad, about 7 or 8 years old, in the garage. And he was destined to become a gigantic tycoon.
Wasn't he from Detroit, though?
Yeah, well, he was from Detroit and Dearborn, yeah. And she was on 16th Street. So that family lived down on 16th Street.
Oh, you're
in
saying
Detroit.
16th Street, Detroit?
In Detroit, yeah, that was in
I thought
Detroit.
you meant Manhattan.
No, did I say Manhattan?
I thought so.
Well, I may have, because I've lived here so long, I'm beginning to think Manhattan, you know. But anyway, so he started the Henry Ford. It was a big the automobile industry, and what I'm saying is that happened back then, and I still can't remember what it was that I wanted to make a point about that, but that
well, Henry Ford.
And then they had a book. Jungle Book. Did you ever see the book? Did anybody ever see the movie Jungle Book with Sabu?
Yes.
That was one. And I remember talking to her, and she says, maybe, yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about the movie. The movie. They had a movie. I'm 5 years old, I'm telling you, with my grandmother, who's a relative, you know. And I'm 5 years old or so. And adventures, you know, and you go swinging on vines and stuff, or ropes and all the things you do. It's a wonder we survived youth. But anyway, and I said there was a movie Sabu and Jungle Book.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, Sabu.
And Jungle Book.
Jungle Book.
There was a movie out, and I had seen it. And then she said, well, maybe we can go to the movie theater. And we learned, and they had a trolley car. They had a trolley. They had a trolley that would go down to Briggs Stadium for the base and along. Anyway, she looks in the thing and it says, in the local theater they're going to play Jungle Book. And I said, could we go? That was just like Mecca. That was like New York City on 4th of July or whatever, everything to go to see Jungle Book with Sabu, where he's riding around on tigers and all that kind of adventure stuff. And I remember she took me to see Jungle Book, which I'd seen 2 times or so. But anyway, I'm remembering all these things about the background, and that's coming up. I contribute that to the pot of understanding about the family and everything like that. But
I don't know Detroit. I've only been there once or twice.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. That's where I was raised up, yeah.
Is 16th Street a good area?
I don't remember, to tell you the truth. 16th Street is getting on downtown now. It's on the map. You could look for it and everything. It's downtown. And also there was Dearborn was a place where a lot was going on. It became the arsenal of the country, Detroit. And then when you started building all the bombs And at Willow Run, all the work for the Second World War, there was nothing else but war material. It was just, there was no automobiles or nothing built. Everything was only bombs and everything in Detroit. So Detroit was a real happening town. It had the highest per capita income when at the time of the Second War, and everything.
Did the government take over the auto factories for armament manufacturing?
Yes, that's all there was. There was nothing for London. You had the Blitz and all that kind of stuff. It was horrible. I mean, and that sort of thing. But we didn't have that. But what did happen is there was nothing new. Nothing new. Everything stopped. There was nothing but bombs and steel and airplanes and bombs and steel and airplanes and bombs. You know, and it was all being produced in Detroit to a large measure. There was the arsenal.
You were a kid during the Second World War, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was born in 1935, and I was, a kid, and then the war ended in 1945. But there was nothing new. Nothing new. Everything was just a wartime effort there. It was in Detroit, and next door. So that was part of it. But that was part of the background there and everything. With that, my remembrance, you're filling me in on understanding these relationships has been very insightful to me, and I would like to have spread it out with this fellow that's talking about the implications of the information technology. That's what's really roiling the earth now.
It is, isn't it?
It is. It's really roiling it. And we mentioned at the end of that other program we did, we mentioned about the destructiveness of the technological extension of our consciousness. All of the technology is an extension of our consciousness. And you can make the world different than in an Eden-like sense, is the way most of the creatures encounter the environment. You can make the world different. And in making the world different, one of the major things they've gotten very good at doing is making weapon systems that give one group the power to go and conquer another one. And it's called realpolitik and everything. It forms the basis of the political competition between the powers in terms of realpolitik, house offer, and all that. And on the other hand, the other hand of the destructive capability, the collective destructive capability of our weapon systems that do exist on hair trigger alert and are there existing in the world now, is from modeling able to tell us that if it were to be unleashed, it would mean the end of our species.
Mutual destruction.
No, total destruction of the whole species. Other species have wiped themselves out in the past, or they've been wiped out by environmental conditions. That's the origin of species, and that's the way the whole process of evolution developed, and the whole planet. 13 billion years or so, and everything. And now they got down to where you got these systems.
Sorry about this.
That's no problem. It sounds like, is that you playing?
My wife keeps calling me, and I keep telling her.
Oh, say hello or something. You could just do it. Anyway, that's the one vector, is this thing that it could be, and that's something that should be made available to everybody. I don't think people are adequately aware of the fact that is a new. We could not do that. We were trying. Maybe you and I even are old enough. I am. You maybe just in a distant way. You're younger, but in the Second World War, we were trying to kill each other as best we possibly could. We were going full tilt boogie. Do you understand?
Yes.
It was over the top again, fellas. Over we go for the flag and for this, and boom, we'll kill. We were trying, and we were impotent at anything like species. The only people who killed were the fellas in the trenches. Had to go out and fight the thing and everything, and then we'd celebrate them.
How are we different? How is humankind different from other species that have become extinct or, made themselves extinct?
That's an extremely important question at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes us, and certainly with our intellect, that we realize what we're doing?
Not only the intellect, but the ability to extend our consciousness in technology.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple monkeys can wander through a jungle and pick up a stick or something to hit something or something, but they didn't have anything like the capability to alter the environment. The outering of our technology allowed us to be able to make the world different.
Mm.
And it was the technology that has been the basis of Rome and the civilization and the whole Megillah. The whole beginning of it was our ability to do that. And then part of it has been destructive, because what was the assumptions by which we lived were ones that were, one would assume it was in Cro-Magnon caves, or people that lived on carrion, hoping you could or running away from cats on the Serengeti plain, who would run us down like rabbits. We were food source for them. We weren't able to fight much, like against the teeth and, of the given capability, but we eventually developed the ability to come to emerge out of that. But then species do get to a point where they become overextended and they go extinct. In fact, there's just one extinction after another, the whole evolutionary process. And then the new appears. New species appears. The evolution of species, Darwin and all of that, explaining how the variety came. And so we do apparently now have the ability. We didn't have it at any time in history. We couldn't destroy the species. We could destroy the tribe in the other village and assert our control over them, or have, they used to go with lances with the knights would knock each other off the horse or something, and all these kind of things. But that's extended. And then this other thing that's extended is the not only the and then you have economic systems and theories. We had king. We used to have heredity. We had heredity of the king and royal families who were given a special place in our society and in our hearts and so forth. And we would celebrate the royal family du jour in various places in various ways and all that kind of stuff. A way of getting a sense of continuity and also rivalries and all the rest of a lot of what Shakespeare wrote about and all the rest of all of that. But then but we were protecting our impotence at a level of species, and nothing else was able to do it. But now we have the capability to, that's reached such a degree. We were trying. Second World War, we were impotent. We couldn't do it. We didn't have the capability. Okay, we had to come to terms of it with us winning and so forth. But now it's there to where that capability is, and we get the atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb. I've done programs with the fellow who designed the hydrogen bombs, and those things. And those things that the what is it called? The fleet, the American fleet of submarines.
Oh, the nuclear.
The nuclear, but there's particular ones. There's a certain group that carry not just nuclear. Atomic is something.
The Polaris submarines.
Polaris, that kind of thing, or there's something else. I forget what it's called now. But that fleet of the Americans is that carry the hydrogen weapons, not just the atomic weapons, the hydrogen weapons. They're Trident, I think they're called. The Trident fleet of the American Navy has an ability to, I don't know, they can model it. They can model what it is, and people have modeled it, and apparently it's that, and then there's things that would come in extension of that. But if there was a miscalculation, it would mean the end of the species. If it was unleashed in its full tilt boogie way, it would mean the end of the species. Now, in the realm of the way things work in evolution and so forth, you can have a countervailing capability to improve the human condition. I think things are getting better. My dad, Harold Channer, he's the one you called my attention to before, and I don't want to bore the audience and everything, but we've met each other that way and everything. He died on his 48th birthday. I was with him when it happened. It was very grim. And at that time, the average age for a male in the United States of America was 48. That's all. The 48. Now we've got streptokinase, we got all kinds of new developments and things, and we can extend that to 78, 88, or something like that. We've made progress from that. But so that's now, and then the ability to provide for everyone materialistically, not just idealistically by thinking good thoughts or something, but materialistically, like elementary things like being able to eat and being able to breathe air that is breathable and being able to have the basic rudiments of what is called being a have. It's grown significantly in terms of our technological capability of good design to provide for everybody in a what would be like a have way rather than have not. Throughout most all of history, you had a vast array of have-nots who had no choice but to be subservient to those who had the have-ness, which was mostly in the form of the military means by which they could override the interest or it was slavery. There was a system of slavery, one system of slavery more or less after another. But now we've got a point where we can take care of everybody in a reasonable way by modern standards of comfort, and we can take care of everybody, and we've got the capability to do it. We have a capability to do that, but we have implications of all of our institutions that won't allow us to do what we're capable of doing in a positive way because we're caught up in outdated ideas of what the actual reality limitations are. But we may be coming to a time of qualitative transformation now, particularly as all these things go into robotics, which is beyond just the information technology, but is an extension of it. And it's going to undercut the means by which they've had people get the means to have a way of living done by what they do. It's called a job, or it's called a role you play in the productive process of material goods and services. Has always been what you do is you have somebody owns all the assets that are creating increasingly the wealth, the technological capability. It's all owned by a tiny plutocratic class everywhere, and most of the people, the only way they have to get income to buy some of the things that make up being a have is by having a job in a context where all the assets that are actually creating the wealth are held by a tiny plutocratic class like it was in ancient Rome or in the feudal houses of Europe during the feudal 1,000 years after Rome. And it's still not there, but the capability is there to take care of everybody that was never there in the historical pattern. So, and that's an extension of, and one of the extensions of all of that is we're getting a means of measuring with the DNA and so forth, the actual background. Could you have gone through and done all of the research you've done on our family, if you don't mind? You've done a lot of research on that. If it hadn't been for the availability to you to think in terms of the scientific understanding of things and connections that the DNA, the invention, the expansion of understanding that the research, the DNA research, brought available to us. You would have had to rely upon records of churches or the way they had to do it, writing things down and everything.
Well, yes,
but now
exactly.
DNA is opening up a new window of us being able to understand the past, much better than we've ever been able to do in a way that is qualitatively new.
Right, and the written record is also very erratic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because it isn't always there.
Yeah, that's right.
If it is there, sometimes it's wrong.
And it's fudged sometimes.
You don't even know what the motive was in the first place.
Yeah.
For it being written down.
Right.
So you have to be a little bit cynical about it sometimes, whereas DNA is
scientific,
accurate, right?
Yes, right. I like that. I like that scientific. I think we've been born, you and I, for whatever it's worth. I'm getting on now and everything, but we were born into an incredibly interesting time.
I think so.
I mean, of qualitative transformation. That's the way evolution works. The process gets to a certain point, and then it goes. 99% of everything that's ever occurred has gone extinct. That's the pattern. That's the normal pattern. Now, we maybe blow it up, or global warming may do it in, or some war or something, but we're still fighting over the same old ideas that have held for 200,000 years of our evolutionary experience. And now the conditions have changed materially. And they haven't caught up. The humanity hasn't managed to catch up with the reality of that material difference in a way that is of positive it denies the capability of there being enough. You cannot, it's zero sum. Scarcity is the idea that has undergirded the reality, and if one wins, somebody else has to lose. All of that scarcity thinking has been the characteristic in which everything has evolved. No?
Yes, absolutely.
And now we're at a point where we've got this capability resonatingly there. It's resonatingly there, but it can't even be mentioned that you could have a situation other than realpolitik, or the few will own everything and everyone else will be more or less answerable, or the slaves of the people who own all the assets creating the wealth. So they're going to have to come up with something new, and they don't come up with it yet.
Well, also, in the future, when robotics take over in so many different areas,
yes,
what does that leave the human? Where does that leave me?
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, my being. What is it about? I mean,
well, that's a problem that exists. Yes. Well, I think that's the major problem confronting mankind, because that could lead something like somebody crazy like they had Mussolini or something, or some other major thing that thought they had some sort of thing to claim to the real reality, and would set off the destructive scenario rather than allowing the positive scenario that is resonatingly there in our total collective capability, but it doesn't fit into our geopolitical thinking out of 200,000 years of our past experience. We're going to be coming into a new thing, something new, and it can't be understood because they're all caught up with the assumptions coming out of the past.
Yes, there's a good example of this in modern day politics, where our president has been talking about manufacturing jobs, how they're leaving America, and he is pledging to bring back more manufacturing jobs.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is there are fewer manufacturing jobs, not because they're necessarily going overseas, but because they're being taken over by robotics.
Thank you. That's the largest question, and it's never mentioned. The implications of that is never mentioned. Only things like Mr. Trump.
You mentioned Mr. Ford earlier.
Yeah, well, that was a different era.
How many people did it take to make a car when he was running his first production line?
Well, he invented the assembly line. Somebody stands there all day long turning a nut, turning a nut, turning a nut, turning a nut. So that's what somebody does. It's called a job, where you get something for doing something that the robots are going to be able to do better, and they won't need people to do those things. And that's the only way people have to get money, normal people, because they don't know anything of the technology that's really responsible for the production.
Exactly.
They're going to have to do something.
In my previous lifetime as a journalist, covering the different various industries, I was actually covering the mining industry for a while.
Right.
And I was struck by the fact that, 25 years ago, you would have a shift of 250 men going down a mine.
horribly difficult,
Nowadays,
scary stuff. Yeah.
You have barely 20 on
Yeah.
a shift because it's almost completely mechanized.
And moving toward the
and
vanishing
this whole
point.
issue of cold jobs
Right.
is a false argument also because there are no jobs.
Well, but the question is if they're going to be able to
use coal anymore.
Yeah, the robotics, and they're coming, and everybody responsible, seems to me, that's the major focus on people's attention, not so much on the information technology. That template is written, and it's just expanding, and it's not going to do anything but expand with more and more capability and everything. But the robotics thing is something new because that's taking over the job of the guy who stood on the nut, and you won't need people to do the things that they have been required to do in order to have the production. Yeah. So their purpose in being is to be a, let's say, wage slave. And they're not going to be even serviceable as a wage slave in order to get the money to buy the bread to eat.
Well, it gets even more insidious.
More insidious, that's okay.
Well, when you look at, for example, your smartphone.
Well, I haven't even learned how to make it work yet. I just got it. Should I throw it in the trash or should I learn how to make it work? I need advice from a young man like you. I just got it the other day.
Well, I mean, they're very useful in many ways.
I understand, yeah.
And I was in the news business for 40 years.
Yes, sir, you were.
This is an area that I like to talk about.
Yeah.
The whole idea of news.
Yeah.
It's changing.
Uh-huh.
And for example, on the various websites, for example, if you just go onto Facebook now, it will tell you what's trending. In other words, we're telling you what's important.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it's an algorithm.
That's all. Yeah.
It's an algorithm which is deciding what is news, and it's also directed entirely towards you as a particular consumer, because the computer world they know because of your habits what you're interested in.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What your income is.
Yeah. Right.
So the news is no longer what is important to your community or your country. It's what they say is important to you.
Yeah, right. Well, that's I think it was like that in Caesar's day. I don't think that, or I used to think about it sometimes about these guys who used to have, like in Rome. No, not in Rome, in the Nile, and they built these pyramids. Did you ever see the pictures? They got a great big slab of rock. And they had to have about 100,000 guys, and they had to be pulling that piece of rock across the hot sand. And I cannot believe that they were doing that because they were all head up about some wage they were getting. It could have been, but I think it was probably done under the dent of slavery.
Yeah.
Slavery's been the policy throughout the whole human society. Now, we got a chance. Now, if this is the thing, where is it going to come? The people are going to come up. First of all, you got a thing. You got supply side. You got Keynes. You got all Schumpeter. You got all the economic theorizing. You got all this kind of stuff. A lot of it's all dependent upon the labor theory of value. Mr. Karl Marx, labor theory of value. That all value comes from labor, and the other stuff is stolen and everything. But what about this thing about right wing, left wing? Now we got Trump, and then we got Democrats, and we got all this sort of paraphernalia of the political differences and everything. But let's say from the standpoint of most people, it seems to me that are well, no, it's not fair because I'm being unfair. But in terms of my experience and everything, most of the people that are close to what I feel comfortable with is called liberal, or from the left, okay, and so forth, for whatever it's worth and everything. But at the same time, it's the people that are on the right who, by and large, are the people who own the assets more, or the bankers and the people that have that kind of a relationship to it. Now, don't we have to have some sort of a way of relating to them from the side of the people who are concerned for the plight of what's called the least among us, you know, that kind of stuff. There's not enough. And on a world scale, the masses of the people have been treated so just like in slave-like conditions. But what relationship does the left or the liberal or the intellectuals and everything, they think they're mostly there. The others are motivated by other things in my way of thinking. But what do they present that could be used by the people who are concerned with getting through to the right way that would be relevant? And one of the things is, it seems to me, they're going to have the hotshots, or the people who own everything and have the position of leadership and all that kind of stuff. They're going to have people, no matter what's going on, they're going to have people that it's not going to do them any good if there are people that have no jobs or no contribution to production, because they're going to have people with buying power to clear the market of all the goods and services and goodies they can produce with all of their hotshot technology and so forth. And the people they're going to have market capability to clear the market of the things that can be produced. So they're going to have an alternate way of forming capital other than just those who have get more, which is the pattern that they've more or less fallen into by and large. But they're going to have some way of having it to have a there's a fellow, Louis Kelso's got a thing where they and he was along with Russell Long and some others and everything, but he called it binary. They're going to have to form capital in a way where there will be not only Federal Reserve behind it, the issuing of notes and everything, but there's going to have to be a system of insuring the insurance. Reinsurance is called. They're going to have a government-backed system to reinsure in a way that can take up the risk of the capital assets to make the investments, and they could then be competitive in terms of the value of what they're actually doing, but then they could have it safe to have a ownership stake, which the right seems to want to have, the property ownership, to everybody in a way that would give them a right to have ownership of capital assets that are going to be producing wealth, and that they're also going to have, because they're going to also then get income by that, by something other than their job participation, but as an owner of the capital assets producing the, let's say, cornucopia of wealth where everybody in the world becomes a have. Now, is that maybe something that doesn't make any sense? They're going to have a way of getting buying power into the hands of the masses when their whole process of developing things are going to eliminate the job possibilities. They're just going to be getting in the way. So they're going to have to open up capital ownership to the masses as a way of distributing buying power. Or how are they going to distribute buying power to the masses if they let their robots and things they're producing run full tilt boogie without any concern for the masses or concern for the least among us? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? There has to be an alternate way of dealing with this new reality that's emerging, and it doesn't come up. It's just all fighting on the same right-left kind of terms that the two have.
Are you concerned about where robotics could eventually end up?
Well, I'm concerned that robotics could end up with a world. I'm actually of an opinion that I think we're going to end up with a world where everybody's going to be a have.
Yeah, right.
There's no reason to have haves and have-nots any longer. We got a capability of taking care of everybody in a, let's say, have-like way. You don't have to have have-nots. And what they're doing, they've always had to have have-nots. They called them slaves, or they called them whatever, and they're still wage slaves in a way. And that would undercut, that would be something the right could do to undercut the left by saying, why are you talking, because they're still arguing over the same stuff they've been arguing over for centuries. rather than seeing a qualitative differences in which those arguments could be made with adequate extensions of ideas that could be relevant to what could be done to avoid the anarchy that could come from a lack of vision and so forth, because those things are hovering over just over over the horizon, and it could lead to these weapons being unleashed in a spasm of absolute anarchy. If they don't, they need to have a way of involving everybody in the way things are actually being produced in a way, but they have to allow that it has to be a way in which they are like haves. We got a capability. We don't have to have have-nots as we've had to have collectively through time. And that's never mentioned as a possibility. It's only if I win, you have to lose. If you lose, I have to win. Still thinking among all of our political leadership, it seems. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, if everyone
gets a piece of the action,
if everyone has everything they need,
yeah, that's right.
Then does that not take away the that aspiration that forms the humanity?
Well, I don't know. Did you ever play? Do you play instruments or anything like that? No. Do you like music? Didn't I hear you did music or something? Or am I wrong?
It's your grandfather, but
well, he liked music.
No,
I got a lot of friends. I was telling you about I was a real good dancer. I really was in my day. I don't know if I couldn't do it now, but I was really, really, really good with Bob Marley and those guys out of Jamaica. They really know how to make music and everything. I used to dance my fool head off downtown with these guys. But what I'm trying to say is a jam session. You know the idea of a jam session where you get really good, what do you call it, musicians? And you got guys jamming, okay? Guys and gals, okay? You got to get that into it. But they're going like this, and they're going and they're playing. And then, first of all, you could do this. This guy, blah, 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 blah. And they finally get it together. So the trombone's with the car. And you get a jam session where there's thing going on, okay? And then it's going like this, and it's going blah, 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 and then one guy goes blah, 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 and it gets up to another level, and then it gets to a level where they're all in sync with one another in a jam session. You ever been involved in that? It's a jam session, and do you understand? And it's really out into a new thing. Do you understand? So suppose we got a human, maybe we're bound to have to try and find something where the whole human society is in a big, gigantic jam session where everybody's doing what they best can do and want to do in a jam session way. That would introduce us, if we can make it, to where everybody's liberated.
Everyone's doing their own thing?
Yeah, everybody's doing their own thing, but they're doing it in like a jam session, okay? And everything, they got the means to do that, then there would be the universe is synergetic. The behavioral systems resonatingly more than the sum of the parts. And it would be, if you get a jam session, there would be a resonancy that would interaccommodate the system of which we're a part to a universe at a level transcendent to what we've been for 200,000 years and introduce us, if there is such a thing, to a universal mind. Some people would call it God or whatever, but it would introduce us to a new way. We're speciating. We're going through a process, wide awake, of speciating in an evolutionary sense in universe. And it's not just like the old days. But nobody ever talks about it much. But I think they're going to have to come to some understanding. What?
Harold, are you optimistic?
Well, I want to be optimistic in that sense. I think there's a way to do it to bridge the gap between the right and the left, instead of that fight going on. And it's going to be built around the idea of how are you going to get buying power, or just the right is all more materialistically. And that's what everybody's concerned about. You know, it has to be. And so you have to get that together. So I think Mr. Trump, I'm very worried about Mr. Trump, very worried. I'm afraid he could turn into a fascist like in no time at all, flat. I'm very worried about that. But he's got a thing, and there's got to be something for the left other than just let's get a bunch of jobs for people. or the traditional thing, labor theory of value. Mr. Marx was all labor theory of value. That didn't seem to have some, there's got to be something new economically in the terms that are seeing the labor production capability of people is going to be lessened, and they've got to be brought into the way things in the material world is going to be produced that is going to give them the means to participate in that. Or else you're going to have anarchy going, and the system would break down. I don't know. Or to get over the idea that this is just like another time in history. We've been here 200,000 years. This is another year. But we're coming into a whole new relationship of some sort or other, liberation perhaps, or something like that, and transcending the historical pattern in which we have developed.
Do you see the capitalist system as being intrinsically rotten?
I think the name of that book that I thought, I think that it's got a thing. It's got its own systems. The right, that would be the right. You got to be able to deal with them. And the idea they're saying is, well, you can't do that. You know, they got all their things. And the book I like, it's called The Capitalist Manifesto. This is something that's something that could be appealing to the right.
Yeah.
Not only to the ones who are the ones who are concerned with the least among us, but not from a standpoint of greed. It's just greed. And it's very easy. Look, you can do really well if you're just greedy. You know, that's the same old thing that's been said to Roman legions and all over the place and everything. But do you have a thing that can do that in a way? You'd have to have, next to the Federal Reserve Board, you would have to have a capital rediffusion reinsurance, a capital diffusion reinsurance behind the Federal Reserve that gives some guarantee to the market. You'd have to have a reinsuring of the insuring of the goods, that if you're going to extend effective buying power in the hands of everybody, it can't be just a crapshoot like it is for the hotshots that are trying to make it on the right wing slant. You got to have something new. And so that would be something that could be appealing to them. Something along those lines is going to be necessary to the time ahead, and I would hasten the day that it could come. One of the problems is, I'm rambling, I didn't mean to, but I'm sorry we weren't able to play that tape, because it was a really good one. So I think those are things that are going to have to be considered by the society. Are you optimistic? We only got a couple minutes left. Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect?
Well, I think I said earlier, I'm very optimistic.
You are optimistic. You're not concerned about how we might blow it, as they say.
But I'm optimistic in the sense that I see I see my children and my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I see a human spirit in them, which gives me reason to be optimistic.
Yeah. Well, I can see that too. Yeah. I got that. There's a cat. The cat's behind you. We saw the cat. The cat just walked behind you. That is a sign. It's a sign. It's a sign. It's a sign. Yeah, the cat came and gave its approval to what you just said. Did you not see him? He didn't walk behind you. And there's somebody else in the background. Who's that in the background?
That's my wife.
Oh, there she is. Hello, darling.
I said it's a stop sign. You've been on for 2 hours.
I know. We're just getting warmed up, darling. We look forward to. We've been just sort of chatting here, you know, and everything. But it's so good to see you. Welcome back home. And did you have a good visit out in the world and everything?
I did. Yes, I did.
You stayed out of trouble. I'm so proud of you, darling. That's wonderful. That's good. That's what I always say to the young men. Push the envelope, but try to stay out of trouble if you possibly can. It's hard when you're like me. How would you like to be me, for crying out loud? I'm making a joke. Good to see you, huh?
Oh, well, did you get a lot of good information from my
Yes,
husband?
we did, but I wanted to show a clip. We couldn't do it because of the limitations of the damn technology. We got to get a better technology that lets us put little clips in and everything.
Maybe some other time.
Maybe our
Yes, by all means, and we're going to see you again, okay? I'm looking forward to that.
We give you a call.
You're going to give us a call when you're in town or something. What is she saying? She's saying something.
Nothing.
A call.
Yeah.
We'll call.
You call, okay.
Oh.
Okay. Now, this program, it's good to see you, darling. Welcome home.
Okay, are we finished?
No, not quite. We got 2 minutes, okay? Or a minute and a half. So any closing thought you want to give us, Stephen James, and on this long rant of mine? I've been ranting. It was only because that's the thing I've been thinking. Not very many people think along those lines. But I'm glad you're positive. I am too, really. I want to be, but I have to be a little bit guarded when I think of some of the closeness of the disaster that could be befriending us by the lack of vision, by our leadership. But anyway.
Yes.
So that's it. Then these will be up. These will be up on YouTube. Okay, these programs will be up on YouTube by tomorrow. Okay. And then we'll be wanting to be in touch with you and everything. And thank you for helping to inform me of the background of my family and so forth. It's very interesting, and I'm glad you had a talk with Lisa and everything like that. My daughter.
If I dig up any more photos, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, I have some too that I haven't been able to introduce here, but we have some photos that it all happened on a quick thing. But I thank you enormously for having put this in my attention and everything. And by all means, let's stay in touch with one another and keep going, like on this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll have a coffee together.
Well, yeah, that's what would be good. That would be really very good indeed. Yeah. So it's so good to talk to you and good to see. And we got one more minute. So what do? We got 1 minute. Should we do something? What can we do? Could we sing? Give my regards to Broadway. Remember me to Herald Square. Yeah, I used to live right near Herald Square, but...
did you?
Yeah, we used to live down...
36, you were...
Yeah, that was right, right down the street, yeah.
Yeah, we lived on 73rd and then 76.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, you were in New York, you lived here for how long?
For a while, we lived here about 3 or 4 years, but we had a house in New Jersey. Princeton.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, that's a nice town too, yeah, and there's a lot. So, okay, thanks very, very much for putting up with this and everything. It was very good talking to you, my brother. And we'll look forward to hearing from you and being in touch, okay? And we do in the audience, thank you for viewing. That's it for now. His name is Stephen James, as you can see, or Steve, freelance writer and photographer, and a gentleman extraordinary who's understanding the importance of understanding genetic and genome thinking and in the importance of understanding family backgrounds. Thank you very, very much, okay? So look forward to being in touch with you in the future, Steve, okay? Okay.